Scaling a business isn't all glossy headlines and overnight success. It's messy, it's tough, and it's full of lessons that no one warned you about. I'm Nikki Jupp, the founder of Talent Gateway, and I've helped over 100 scale-up leaders to build the right team to enable them to grow with confidence. This is Scaling Stories Unfiltered, where founders, CEOs, and leaders share what really happens behind the scenes. No fluff, no filler, just honest conversations to help you grow smarter. So let's get into it.
I was very fortunate in that a client of mine who came and found me said, look, come and tender for us. And I spoke to them about what their process was. They had 7 different brokers looking, which were too many. And it's a good size account. So it gave me a real tick and a real okay. And they just said to me, the words I always remember, there's 2 things you've just achieved, Pete, is that 1, you'll never be employed again. And 2, you must always pick up the phone to me.
Today, I'm joined by Pete Cowan, founder of Westfield Insurance. Pete's journey from cold calling in a loft conversion to building and selling a successful brokerage is packed with lessons in resilience, culture, and doing business your way. He built a business with heart, stayed close to his clients, and made bold decisions when it mattered most. Pete, welcome to Scaling Stories Unfiltered. Pete, tell us about not necessarily what you did at school, although if you want to share that, go ahead. But what really drew you into insurance, given the wealth of experience and number of years that you spent in your career there?
To be fair, I left school having not particularly enjoyed school. And I don't think school particularly enjoyed me either. So I couldn't get out the door quick enough. I needed to be working. And at the time, banking and insurance were the 2 easy ones to follow. My mum worked for Royal & Son Alliance in Croydon. And she got me an interview and I somehow got myself a job there. Spent 2 years working at an insurance company and then decided broking was really the area I wanted to go into. It was more client facing and it just felt it was going to be more enjoyable. And so we went from there. I joined a high street broker in South Croydon, did 5 years there, learning the trade, doing motor quotes on a Saturday morning to all of Croydon's finest, which is a strange but interesting time. And then moved into commercial broking and did 15 years at a firm before they eventually decided to take different directions and offer me redundancy. And it was only at that point that I decided to venture into running my own firm. Up to that point, I was very happily employed.
So it's so interesting, that sort of that spark. Tell me a little bit about that, because for many people, entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. What made you think you wanted to start something else rather than just carry on and work for others in the sector that you know so well?
To be fair, there's probably 2 people, probably more, but 2 specific people. One was a client of mine, or an old client of mine, and one was someone I'd known in the industry for a while. I've been made redundant. I was absolutely shattered, if I'm honest with you. The firm I've been with for 15 years, I was heartbroken that I was no longer going to be working with them. And I took a couple of months out just to try and get my head around it. I was married, house, 2 kids, bills, all the worries that go with it. And I went looking I had 3 job interviews. I was fortunate enough. I hadn't been to market very often in terms of my CV and in terms of my growth within the business. So I started off as an account handler, then grew to running a sales team. And I got these interviews and they went very well. One of the guys in the interview who I'd known since I was 18 just said to me, why aren't you doing this on your own? Why are you going to do it for us? And
interesting.
It clicked a little bit in my head. And I'd already had this thought. I had a client had phoned me as well. Somehow got my personal mobile from probably someone who shouldn't have given it at my old firm. And he phoned and said, when are you starting up? So I had 2 people that kind of reinforced in me thought I was having that, why not? What's the worst that can happen? And only at that point did I think, I have been doing this for others for years and I've been successful to a point. I don't see it as being a tricky thing to do. And so just sat back and thought, let's go. Let's have a try. The worst thing that can happen is I can try and I can fail and then I can just go and get a job. And literally those 2 people, I say one is still a client and he still reminds me on a regular basis that I am where I am because of him. It's those 2 were just the little bit of reformation that I needed, that actually trying it wasn't going to be the end of the world if it didn't work. But why wouldn't it? It's worked for me working for others.
Yeah, so interesting, because I think particularly you shared the fact that you had the mortgage, you had the family, For some people that's scary, but it sounds to you like it was very much a why not, which is great. So tell us about the start. That was obviously the start of Westfield. You bit the bullet, you got started. Did you have a vision?
The vision,
Take us through the journey.
yeah, the vision was to not end up potentially working at McDonald's, was the initial thought process. I very much, the industry that I'm in, there's different routes into it. So to get fully authorised takes a bit of a while. And so I became what's called an appointed representative. So I'd set up my firm and I was working under the guidance, mentorship and protection of another company. There's a company called OAMPS, who the chap at OAMPS was one who'd given me the nod and said, Pete, why don't you have a go? And they were absolutely marvellous for me. They couldn't have been better. They allowed me to get my feet on the floor whilst I applied for full authorisation, which took about 6 months. And at that point, I would say to the people that I was talking to that it was a lifestyle business. I wasn't looking to rule the world. I was looking to keep the people off the door. I very much reversed engineered what I wanted from the business. So I looked at income and what I needed to stand still and to keep paying the mortgage and to keep the lifestyle that I wanted for my family. And I reversed engineered that back into what I needed to earn in terms of income in a business, making sure I paid my tax, very important part. And then decided, yes, I can do it. That's my business model. Year one is if to earn a salary of X, I need to earn Y with all the overheads incurred. Do I believe I can achieve that? And I felt I could. And so that first year was very much doing that, what I felt was a real hard yards of sitting on a phone, cold calling from the yellow pages.
Yes.
All the bits that I really don't ever want to do again.
And that is so hard. I remember the days sitting on my own the conservatory thinking this is the bit that I really don't like. But you know what? You don't half learn.
Yeah, I always found it was the first call of the day. I was working from home. I'd converted my loft. I had a young family at the time, so I was working from home, but I wouldn't, every excuse not to make that first call. The house had never been so clean. I'd washed up everything. The car was clean. Everything was perfect. And only then would I make that first call. And I found once you got past that first call, you very quickly got into a routine. Then you could spend 2, 3, 4 hours just making calls and chatting and just trying to introduce yourself and let people know who you were and just see if you could get the opportunity to perhaps pop in and chat. And I laid very heavily on the fact that I was a new business. I was a small, independent family business. And that stood us in good stead. I think we perhaps got in to speak to more people on that basis, that potential clients were giving us the opportunity because we were trying something, because they could perhaps hark back to their starting days or the stories that they'd heard of their starting days from the generations before, that actually giving someone who was trying something new, I had the background, I had the experience, that they'd give us a crack. And it seemed to work perfectly for us.
That's quite interesting, the fact that people were willing to give you a go, but then you followed that up with very much, but you had that experience. I think often one of the challenges that getting a business off the ground is sometimes if you haven't got that credibility. And clearly you had that in.
I've been working for a firm. I did work experience with them when I was 15 years old and decided broking was perhaps a route. And I've been working with them for 15 years and they'd grown and I'd grown through the ranks. They floated on the AIM market to some degrees of success. So I had that market knowledge. I had the experience of dealing with clients of all different sectors, of all different sizes. And so that I was able to get that across it. Whilst I was new as an entity, I wasn't new to the business.
Yes. So you got it off the ground, you went through the pain and I guess the joy of the early wins. How did you begin to grow? You obviously went one to 2 or 3, or tell us a little bit about the early days.
Yeah, I was very fortunate in that a client of mine who came and found me said, look, come and tender for us. And I spoke to them about what their process was. They had 7 different brokers looking, which were too many. And I said, it doesn't work that way. And they said, look, Pete, just have a go. So I did. We won the business, which was great, which gave me that real, and it's a good size account. So it gave me a real tick and a real okay. And they just said to me, the words I always remember, there's 2 things you've just achieved, Pete, is that 1, you'll never be employed again. And 2, you must always pick up the phone to me. And those are 2 things he said to me when we first won his account. And they're still with us now. And that gave me the springboard, really. The firm that I'd left was going through a period of great transition itself. Other staff had been asked to move on. And literally, I had two turn up on my door and say, Pete, can we come and work with you? You want to give it a go? And I'd said, look, I'm not taking any staff on at the moment. I was very much of the mindset that I would take people on at a point where I had no choice, if that makes sense. I'd grown to a point where I needed support rather than I was very conscious at all times of the financial implications of taking other people on, the additional stress of having their futures in my hands as well.
Yeah.
And so I took on these what we call appointed representatives. So they came on to try and build their own business under my umbrella.
Okay.
I could give them access to market and agency. That way, I very much felt I was trying to pay it forward a little bit. So the guys that came on, I didn't charge them anything for 6 months, which gave them a chance to try and run the business, get themselves up within 6 months. If you, especially in my industry, if you've got the ability to win clients, if you've got the agency support you need, if you've got what it takes to run your own business, and these guys came on board and we gave them 6 months to really get their feet under the table and see if it worked. And it did. And they effectively became what we would class as account execs, i.e. they're running their own clients, but under my umbrella. And we were dealing with all the compliance and all the, if you like, the business elements of their business. Yes. So we're effectively helping them run their business, but all they were doing was running their accounts and we were guiding and doing the rest with them. So we started with one and it ended up as 6.
Wonderful.
And at that point, we needed a couple of bits of staff as well. So my wife came on board to run the accounts side. She became the FD and ran the account side for me. And then we had a couple of administrators came on as well.
Clearly interesting that you didn't follow the path of growth for growth's sake. Let's just call it that. That conscious decision to wait until you absolutely needed to take people on, because often people will try and grow the team first and then want the business to come.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a few brokers set up around the same sort of time in and around the Croydon area. I'd moved out to West Sussex at that point, but in and around the Croydon area. And friends of mine now, and very different approaches. That some that were loaded up with staff early doors, and then, as you say, went and grew the business to match the staffing. And I was very conscious all the way through that this was a journey I was just starting. Yeah. And if it was going to go wrong, I only wanted it to go wrong for me. I didn't want to have other people reliant on my success in running and growing the business to impact their lives. So therefore, if it did go wrong, if I didn't achieve the sales I needed to achieve, if I didn't have the retention I needed to achieve, I only wanted to affect me rather than people who were reliant on me. The AR route gave me, it cleared my conscience that others were responsible on my actions initially. I settled into it after a couple of years, but initially that was a big driving force. It meant there was no pressure on the business. There's no pressure on myself to succeed, which meant I could do things in the way and the format that I wanted and at the pace that I wanted initially as well.
That's quite interesting. And was there a flip over at some point where you got more comfortable?
I think probably after 24 months. The first 12 months it was going through the authorization process, took me about 6 months. Then I was truly independent, which was slightly terrifying yet exciting at the same time. Getting agencies from insurance companies was fun because they all seemed to want me to promise the earth. I didn't have the earth. And I was lucky, I think, that I'd been in the industry long enough and had real good relationships and friends with people over the years that when I was asking for an agency, they were saying we'd normally want a guarantee of £250,000 worth of premium in the first year. And I was going, look, I could be in McDonald's next week. I don't know. Nothing against McDonald's. I could be in McDonald's next week. I don't know. And they agreed not to press too hard. And I'd said to them, look, if I win, then you're going to win with me. Yeah. And I think I was lucky enough. I had enough. We probably started with a Lloyd's agency, a Lloyd's brokerage, and then 5 insurers. And that was enough for me to be able to be independent. And then we grew from there. And that at the end of that second year, I really felt that we were comfortable in who we were. We knew the directions that we wanted to take. We knew the markets that we wanted to go into. And the procedures were in place. I'd worked very hard on understanding how I wanted the business to run from an admin perspective. Being a salesperson of some sort, your weakness is normally your admin, and therefore I had to
Yeah.
really focus to make sure that I put in place a structure that allowed using myself as a template where my weakness is. Okay, I need to make sure I have procedures in place that will pick up my own weaknesses before I can then roll that out to the other guys who were going to be focused on getting in business and retaining clients. And that back office side of stuff was really important. And we got it right because we need to be compliant. We need to make sure we're protecting ourselves, protecting our clients from potential errors. So that was really important to me that I made that as simple as possible and almost as foolproof as possible so that anyone joining were working at this base level, that providing you did certain things in certain ways. So when we did file audits, we knew that everyone was compliant and doing everything right. And that was based off, I think, me understanding my own weaknesses of getting a deal, giving myself a pat on the back, sending an invoice and moving to the next one as quick as I can. I needed to build some support system in there to ensure that wasn't happening all the time. And we were dotting those I's and crossing those T's.
Yeah. Which ultimately will come on to it. My guess would be that impacted probably the acquisition piece, but we'll touch on that just in a few minutes. Because process is one of those things that people unpack as part of, do we want to buy this? Is it a bit of a mess if we lift the bonnet? But we'll get there.
Yeah, we will.
So what about that? All sounds like, I'm sure at the time it was incredibly challenging, all of that. But what were some of the biggies, the big challenges in those growth years, whether it's commercial, operational, or personal, that you could share, and how did you deal with those?
I think from a business perspective, I think that the understanding of where we wanted to be, who we were, was really important. So the guys and girls that came on board, when I sat and decided who we were talking to, it was really important that their ethos matched mine. What I didn't want to be trying to do was manage my own account and grow my business with these guys and girls and find there's conflict in terms of what's right and what's wrong. I've got a pretty strong moral compass. My parents very kindly installed upon me. And to make sure that the client was the central focus of everything, almost to the detriment of the finance side of stuff, which I know sounds silly, but once we'd got to a size, we weren't chasing the pennies all the time. So therefore, it was all about retention of the client and making sure that the client was happy and that they understood what they were purchasing, why they were purchasing it. And I don't think it's an overly complicated world. If you say you're going to phone someone, phone them.
Yeah.
If you say you're going to do this bit of work for them, do the bit of work for them. Manage the expectations, but just do what you say you're going to do. And that was really important that those that came on board, that was probably one of the biggest challenges for me personally, was to make sure that I didn't lose sight of what I wanted the business to be for the sake of growth and for the sake of getting more people on who could bring on more business. It was important and we did it in a way that retained how I felt it should be done, rightly or wrongly, different people, different ways. But for me, that whole client first, money second was quite important. There's a big piece in the industry, and we'll see how it evolves over commission income versus fee income, i.e. you're paid a percentage of income from an insurer for placing with them, which applies insurance premium tax to it, and you can do very well on that. Or you look at the piece of work you're doing and go, how much is this actually worth? And you charge a fee instead of commission. That was something I'd worked on very hard to start with, and keeping it clear in my mind that I sometimes felt you could earn too much money on placement and getting commission from insurers in relation to the workload. And there's other flip sides where you've got a motor fleet of 200 vehicles and the insurance company are offering you not a huge amount of money, but it's a huge amount of work. So it works both ways. But that was important to me, was that we had a structure in place that recognised the workload we were doing, and then we were compensated accordingly, whether it be that we were taking less for the work, or in some cases we were charging more and explaining to the client, you're phoning us every day, therefore we need to charge a rate. So that was probably the biggest commercial one. Was running through that way.
That's quite interesting in the sense that it's clear to me, and I'm sure people listening, that conscious decision, whatever label we put on it, I would put a label on it, you were building a culture. consciously building a culture. You might not have you might not use that term, but you had a clear idea about your ethos and therefore the kinds of people who would thrive in Westfield.
Yeah.
So how did you make sure that the people that you brought into the business shared that value or values? Was there a process?
Yeah. I'd love to say I had a well thought out process.
Yeah.
It was all gut instinct from meetings and conversations. So
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough in the first two guys that came to me had worked for me in my previous existence, which was a more structured business, I would suggest. It was a larger firm. So things such as KPIs and mid-year reviews had all been carried out. So I knew their strengths and weaknesses from having managed them before. So that made that a bit easier, in that they came in and I knew already this chap's coming in and he's very good at this, but I know there's a weakness over here. So I need to make sure that we've bolstered that area to make sure he's fully rounded for us. But also that gut instinct as to who they were as individuals, which was something I relied on very heavily. I found interviewing people an excruciatingly painful, almost falsehood as to who they are. Because anyone that's coming into an interview nowadays, you would think knows how to be interviewed. So the interviews mostly took place at my home because I was working from home. So they were brought into an environment of a working, living household, two young kids, two dogs, a wife, sometimes a bit of mess, sometimes not. So I was bringing everyone into my business, and my business was my family and my family was my business. So therefore, if I felt if they fitted in there, if they understood where I was coming from, and then what they believed came across in discussions about how client management was everything, absolutely everything to me, was how do we look after people as best as we possibly can? These people are giving us they're allowing us a lifestyle, they're allowing us to pay our mortgage. It's really important that we look after them as best we can. And everyone that came on board shared that, I believe, and that made it quite easy. Even the people I didn't know in that first interview process, they were very aware who I am. Most conversations, my family will come up. That's obviously very important to me. And so they're aware they're coming into a family environment and they're being invited in to be part of an extended family. The business was small enough initially that it was a family. And I really enjoyed that. And I really hoped that what we were doing, so myself and my wife, as the business evolved, was we were giving these guys and girls opportunities to be in a nice workplace, to grow themselves a future. And that was something, again, that was really important to us.
You might not articulate it in this way, but it's really clear that would come across in spades. Yes, in the early days, it sounds like it very much was gut instinct. And that's what most of us do when we're in the early doors. We bring on board people we know, like, trust, people we've worked with before, or we ask people we know and trust. Do you know anyone? Because they've got similar values to yourself. So any other challenges that stick out for you? We touched on hiring, but anything else?
Yeah, I had a personal issue a few years in. Unfortunately, my wife got ill, and that was a tricky time. So she had to go through the best part of a year's worth of surgeries and treatments and whatnot. And that was tricky, to be fair. But because the business was a smaller business and everyone there, we'd open up this fair environment. It meant I had support through work. I didn't have to worry about the business. I could put it on the back burner for that year to ensure that I could do what was more important to me, which was to be there with my wife while she went through everything. And the business stayed successful. And I think the way that we had dealt with our clients meant I could also let my clients know that I was going through some stuff. So there was that bit of flexibility and that bit of support. And I think that it's probably the biggest thing in my existence in life generally is my wife getting it. But having built the business on a very open and honest basis, both with clients and with my team, meant that I could step back and I could go, look, I've got this going on and I'm not shy. I'll tell anyone on the street anything about anything. It meant that I actually had a 12-month period where I was not focused on the business. Probably a relatively pivotal time. We're 4 years in to the business and starting to make decisions. Insurers were looking at us slightly differently as well, because we'd suddenly become a bit bigger, and who we were was known a bit more, and how we were trading and how we were growing was known a bit more. But I think that openness that we had shown when we set the business up and how we have dealt with insurers and clients and everyone else was held me in great stead. And that was 12 months. We're well out the other side, all clear, happy days. But that was probably one of the biggest challenges, because to be fair, when it all started, I could have quite easily closed the doors, walked away and said, no, it's just not important enough. But we got through it, which is great. The support of the people we dealt with was brilliant.
Yeah, superb. So jumping a little bit onto funding. My understanding is that you didn't go for any institutional funding, that you bootstrapped the business, I think.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider?
No.
Did you consider?
Again, I think the way that I decided to set the business up and run it was, it was just for me to start with. This was in that initial 6-9 month period. It was just for me. So therefore, I didn't need a huge amount of funding. I needed to pay for my authorization fees. I didn't take on a back office system. I manufactured Excel and Word practices. It was perhaps a little bit antiquated. And I look back on it now and go, yeah, it might have been a lot easier if I'd used this. But I was very conscious about money. I didn't want to borrow money.
Yeah.
So therefore, we ran it from home. I'm lucky in that as business, there's no products required. It's just what's in my mind, my experience, my knowledge and my relationships. And therefore, I didn't feel the need to get investment. I didn't want loads of staff. I wanted to grow and us to bring people on as we grew and as it was required, rather than let's try and run a multi-million-pound business day one. Let's put 40 people in seats and pay them when they've got nothing to do. And I carried that through all the way to point of sale, to be fair, where we were, I think, considered to others, were bare bones.
Yeah.
But it
that
also
comes full
built
circle.
Yeah. And I also felt it built into my ethos of client management. If you go and see a client and they trust you with their business, that's great.
Yeah.
To then go, thanks for that, I'm now going to give you to someone else who you don't know. Oh, and if you have a claim, you're going to speak to someone else you don't know. And if there's a problem with your finances, it's someone else you don't know. That went completely against my belief system, in that if someone has trusted me, I should be the one. If there's a problem with a claim and there's bad news, I should be delivering the bad news. I'm the one they've trusted. And there's always in any business, I'd imagine, that difference between those that bring business in and then those that nurture it and look after it over the years. And I felt there was, for me, a position of both. There's that element that someone has trusted me to place their insurances, to protect their business for them and with them. It was instrumental that if there was a problem, I had 100% ownership of that. And therefore, I didn't need others. I just had to manage my own time better to make sure I could continue to offer that. And so that, therefore, the growth came after that.
And was the expectation on those who worked for you to maintain that sort of philosophy?
100%. It's a fundamental belief I still have, in that if someone says to you, I'm going to buy from you, I'm going to trust you to do this for me, when things get tough, if things go wrong, when they need a helping hand, when they just need you to do a simple change for them, you're the one they've trusted. They haven't trusted your name. They haven't trusted the business name. They've trusted Peter, John, Mary, Clive. That's who they've trusted. That, for me, is a relationship that I would just try and build on all the time. That, I'm fortunate. I've got some clients I've dealt with. I've run the business for 15 years, but some clients I've dealt with for 25 years. Yeah. And you have your reviews with them once, twice, 3 times a year. And in the last minute, you talk about insurance, but you've spent an hour chatting about family, life, everything else, because it's evolved over those years. That trust has been built, and that's stood us as a business in great stead, I believe, that we've built those relationships, with those trusted relationships. So the clients are letting us do our job for them and allowing us to, because obviously it's an annually renewable contract. So they're letting us do our job and they're trusting what we're doing for them. And it's just really important for me. That's it. They're not buying into Westfield. They're buying into Peter at Westfield or Thomas at Westfield. That
Yes.
it's the person, and then the business is the structure around the individual that gives them the support.
It's beautiful, a sort of account development, account management. I feel a book there, Peter. I need to write
I
a
can't write
book
and I
on
don't
that.
read.
We'll soon change that. Anyway, so everything, you were growing this business. It was really clear that it had a really strong heart, a strong ethos. And my guess is at some point, either you were approached or you started to consider a sale. Take me through, where were you? Where was your headspace? And how did that all happen?
We've grown nicely. And we got to a point where we were probably at a slight crossroads. I was working effectively, the business was me, some admin girls and guys, and then my ARs.
Yeah.
And I'd got to a point where we'd probably gone through a 3-year cycle where we were just ticking along quite merrily. Nothing wrong, absolutely fine. I think I got bored. We'd grown, we'd got to a point, and there was a decision to be made. Do I say, come on, Westfield's got to this point, let's pick it up, let's move it on, let's start employing people, let's start employing account execs, let's start employing more staff, let's have a real crack at this? Or can I move myself back? Because what I'd lost was I still had my client management, but I then had a lot of the boring stuff you have of running a business. You're dealing with the Financial Conduct Authority, HMRC, all the big names that you just give you grief. And I thought, okay, let's reverse engineer. Let's go. I could sense I was bored.
Yes.
And there's a massive risk if you get bored that you're going to start cutting corners. It's going to come across that you're bored. You're not involved. The excitement's not there. So I was trying to work out a way to reverse engineer myself back to just being an account executive, just to dealing with the clients, going to get more business, the bits that have always excited me. And I looked within the team, and I had a chat with a couple of guys in the team and said, would you be interested maybe stepping up? So I can reverse engineer my way back out to go back to the bits that I like. And there was a potential, but I also knew at the time, and it's perhaps beginning to die down a little bit, but the M&A side and the broking industry was crazy.
Right.
We've got big brokers looking at buying the smaller firms. And I thought I'm foolish not to investigate. And I had a chat with a contact of mine, playing golf, not very good golf, but playing golf. And had said, look, this is where I'm treading water and I've got to make a decision what to do. And he said, have you thought about selling? And I said, yes and no. He said, look, have a chat with a friend of mine who is working M&A at one of the bigger firms. So I thought, it's not going to hurt. So I went in, had a chat and thought, yeah, okay, why not? Seems like an opportunity. And at that point, probably took another 6 months and I was like, yeah, let's do it properly. Let's go and engage with the market. So I spoke to my original Lloyd's broker was on gardening leave, but he put me in contact with a friend of his who helps with M&A stuff. And I had a chat with them and we said, let's shortlist. They understood who we were. They understood my working practices, my ethos, and what was important to me. And we shortlisted 2 or 3 different firms and just had a chat with 2 or 3 different firms. I say in my industry, it's rife. It's in the last 5 years, all of those that I knew that started up their own firms around the same sort of time are all gone. They're around, but they're part of bigger worlds.
Yes.
And it would be foolish of me to suggest anything other than the financial rewards were up there in terms of decision-making process, because you build a business and if you can then withdraw from that in some shape or form and you've been financially compensated for it, we're not silly enough to think that's not part of the decision-making process. But for me, the driving force to get to that point was my acknowledgement to myself that I was bored. And that running the business no longer entertained me. I'm very project-driven as an individual.
Yeah.
And I got to the end of this phase of the project and it was then, do I start? And I sat down, spoke to my wife and we had a chat through, and did we want to make that big step and go, Westfield is going to scale up, we're going to try and become a force. And if I'm honest with you, a bit like when I started the business, I didn't want to put the investment in. I didn't need to, and therefore, and I didn't want to take the risk. I felt I'd taken a risk initially in setting the business up, but
Yeah.
it was a limited risk. All I had was not paying a mortgage on the line. I've now
Yeah.
got ourselves to a position where the risk and the change in lifestyle, if it went wrong, was slightly different. And I also didn't think that I had the skill set to take it that bit further, to make it
Yeah.
bigger. The size
Yeah.
we were, I think, fitted who I am.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've got a hard enough edge to take it to that next level. I am who I am. And so that was a major driver.
Yeah.
And then having chatted to these 3 firms, we narrowed it down to 2, and then we narrowed it down to 1, which is Everywhen, who we're now with.
But I think that sort of that ability to pause and self-reflect and say, I'm not enjoying this anymore, often happens at those different stages of growth, and saying, what are my options? Otherwise, an option you don't want to take is that you slowly kill the business because it doesn't float your boat.
No, and I know it sounds really cliche. The fact my wife had been ill, she was 40. And it's a major shift in my mentality. I spoke to my parents about it quite a lot. And it's a major shift in who I am. And so therefore decision making after that is about not dragging your heels. It's about, if you're not enjoying the space you're in, if you're not enjoying, and work is a big part of your existence. And for me, if I got to a point where I was bored, and if I'm bored, I'm dangerous. The devil makes, as they say, and I need to be engaged. And I'd lost that engagement, I think, at that time. And I felt the only way to get re-engaged was to step back and do the bit that I'd always really enjoyed, which was going out, seeing clients, helping clients as best as I can, and running the business or growing the business wasn't going to feed into that element. So that decision-making process, because of where I've been before, was very simple for me, very crystallized. Am I enjoying what I'm doing at the moment? If not, let's make a shift.
Something.
Let's make a change.
Yeah. So just talk a little bit about the process. Due diligence is, as we all know, incredibly painful. Having run some teams who go in and do the due diligence, I know how much pain it is. So those who are listening, who are considering going through this, just share some of the things that you think people ought to be aware of, both good, bad and ugly.
Yeah, I think probably I had no concept of how painful, I guess, the due diligence is. Not painful into we've got with a very big firm worldwide, and as part of that, I made this in my little brain. I thought due diligence is fine. They're going to come and they're going to go through my business, and I'm comfortable that I have everything in place that I need in place, and that I have my compliance is good. We know we've been audited. We know we've been passed. So all these things are absolutely fine. So I'm very comfortable. Anyone can come and kick around, and if there is a problem, it will be a problem that has not come from any malicious intent. It's just something that's slipped through. I did probably answer the same question set to 6 different sets of people with the same answers over a 6-month period. It's intense. You've got to be prepared to put most of your existence on hold, especially if you're trying to move it at some form of pace. For me, once we had agreed the package, I was like, okay, fine. Let's crack on. Let's move. Because life for moving, sitting still is not getting you anywhere. And so that process kept going. I was thinking, blimey, this is going on. And I've answered this. And I've answered this again. But it's the nature of the beast. And when I look back at the amount of data provided, I had a look at the data house a while back. And my word, I didn't know that over the years we had all that information within the business. Because you do your day-to-day, you run the business, you step forward, you're still winning clients, hopefully retaining clients, managing clients. And then when you actually stepped away and had seen all the information I provided that we had built within the business, I was like, wow, I don't remember building and doing and having those things in place, but they had just evolved over time. Compliance in my industry is massive. We need records upon records of evidencing that we made a cup of tea and how we made the tea and what we made the tea with. Which is fine to a point, but we're a commercial brokerage. We don't deal with personal lines, so we don't deal with individual clients. It's businesses only. Now, for me, that was always a frustration. It's disproportionate that if you're running a commercial brokerage, you're dealing with commercial clients, so people who run their own businesses, who are savvy to a point already, yet where the compliance work was based on dealing with individuals who are buying car insurance or house insurance who may not know everything they need, but it's a broad brush approach to the whole industry rather than it being compartmentalized into what you're doing. And I deliberately didn't do personal lines because it was you need lots of bums on lots of seats to be successful at that, and it wasn't what I was prepared to do. Yeah. So due diligence is interesting. Keep you busy.
Eye-watering.
And spreadsheet work.
So clearly the acquisition went well.
Yep.
And you're now part of a large organisation.
Yep, indeed they are. Yep.
And
I'll get my head around it.
So a lot of founders struggle with identity and control post-acquisition, particularly being part of a large beast, as it were. How have you navigated that shift?
I've got my head in the sand. I don't, I'm joking. One of all through the M&A process, we were talking about, and I think it was really important, I wanted to understand how the business would be integrated. I wanted to understand how it would feel. I wanted to kick the dirt. I wanted to make sure that our clients weren't going to be getting confused in messaging. It's very simple stuff. We've spent years building relationships with our clients. It was really important that any message that went forward, I was very anxious that we made sure that our clients were told in the right way. I'd gone to a meeting about a year before I'd sold out, and I sat with a client and he was telling me about the great relationship he had with his broker, and they were first name terms, and they went out and played golf every now and then. And I knew this firm had just been bought. And we were having this conversation, and I was tendering for the business, and we sat there, and he said, "Oh, hold up, they've been bought, haven't they?" I said, "Yeah, they've." And he just at the time he got a letter through the post from his great friend at the brokerage that was addressed to "Dear Policyholder."
Oh.
And I went, "Oh."
Yeah.
Wow. There we are. And I thought that's the exact opposite of what I want. We know all our clients are known by first names, as it should be. And that message has to come from us as individuals within the business. Because again, that trust element, we need to be able to say to them that we are selling, but we're selling for these reasons.
Yes.
And here's the positives we're going to get out of it. It's really important. About that message I felt need to come from us as individuals. Although I understand that you also need to have this, as they call it, comms go out, obviously bigger firm, but this message has to go out in a formatted way. Whereas because of the way we ran the business, everything was less formal. It was a communication. So I personally went and sat down with some of my larger clients and said, look, this is where we are. This is what we're doing. This is why I'm doing it. I want to get back to broking because that's fun. And most of the people that I spoke to who had run their own businesses understood that almost immediately. Running a business is a pain. So if you can get back to doing what you're doing. So through the M&A process, what I tried to make sure was to understand my position going forward. So what's happened is we've sold into a bigger company. We remain independent within that bigger company. 2 of my team are now managing directors, and I've reverse engineered my way out to be an account executive.
Yes.
Very excited when we've got HR, a conversation with the HR team when I was saying, my title, we need to discuss my title. And I think their thought process was I wanted to be managing director of the most important role in the most important place in the world. And I was like, oh no. And I spoke to the 2 guys that are now running the business within the wider organisation. And I said to them, look, the only way you're going to get comfortable and make this yours is if I've got to reverse out, because otherwise this was my firm. I set it up. I ran it. I grew it. I birthed it. All those things. I've still got a voice and I do like to talk. So therefore, the only way you're going to get your feet under the table and feel comfortable in the roles that the wider business wants you to fulfill is I need to step back. So I said, look, for 6 months, ignore me. I'll try my best to keep my head down, and you guys, even if I think things are not going the way I want, it's really important. That's the only way it can work is I'd had to get as far back as I could. So I wasn't involved in those day-to-day meetings, and that was for them to run the business. I had to trust that they would continue to have the best interests of Westfield at heart within the wider organisation. But I also have to trust the wider organisation has Westfield's interests at heart within what their plans are.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tricky. But I think for me, pulling myself back from that front line, reverse engineering my way, meant I could just, any frustrations I may or may not have had, I wasn't front line. So therefore, I wasn't feeling that initial, I'd made that conscious decision. I'm stepping back. I look after my clients now. That's my job.
Yeah.
And I might get irritated from time to time because you're still watching your business move in maybe different ways, and ethos is maybe changing slightly because you're in a bigger world. But I'm managing to keep the distance and just focus on the job that I now do, which is to just purely look after my clients.
Yeah. Did you?
I would imagine being front line. I imagine being front line watching that evolve it would be incredibly hard. I don't know if I could have sat there, and these things that need to happen, because the whole point of selling is that there's economies of scale and there's extra support and extra marketing, all these. The only way for me to succeed was to step back.
Yeah. And was there any emotion, because obviously there's been a big rebranding and you're now Everywhen.
Yeah.
Let me get it my teeth in. Everywhen. And was there any emotion to letting the name go?
No, there was, when we sold, I have to admit, I was a slightly emotional beast. My parents were quite great soundboards. My dad was a great soundboard for me. Very rarely gave formal advice, but just allowed me to talk at him and work my way through my own things in my head and come out the other side. And then he'd just a little smile. We'd walk the dog, a little smile, a little nod. And unfortunately, Dad's not with us. And Nor's mum, so my two soundboards have gone. But Mum saw us through sale, which is great. But at point of sale, I had to admit, there was just that. Yeah, we've done something here. We've grown something. We started something. We took a risk in 2009. I took a risk with my family, and we've done it, and we've grown it, and we've grown it to a nice place. And now we've been successful, and we've sold it. There is that moment where, for me, I wanted to turn to Dad and go, mate, how about that? And I know whatever you believe about life after life or whatever, I know if he's around somewhere, he's given a nod. But yeah, as for giving up the name, Westfield is still there. We still trade as Westfield. The evolution of that is probably beyond my time. But the name was just a name.
Yeah.
So when I was first started broking, I worked with a guy at the brokers I started working with. I used to listen to him because you learn, for me, in an office environment, you learn so much through osmosis. The working from home thing I now love for myself only. Yeah. But I learned so much just from being around other people, around my peers, hearing what they say, how they talk to people, how they problem solve. That was something you just picked up. And there was a guy I worked with called Pat, and I never once heard him say who he worked for.
That's interesting, isn't it?
He'd speak to his clients and he'd phone up and go, "Hi there, yeah, it's Pat Insurance." Never mentioned the company name. Don't get me wrong, he's still at the same firm. He was at the firm when I was there at 18 and he's still there now. And I thought, actually, that's it, isn't it? So Westfield, it's a name and it's a brand.
Yes.
But I still hark back to what I hope is that actually it's Peter who happens to work for Westfield. And if I happen to work for Everywhen, it's Peter first and the name of the company is secondary.
Yeah. So it's personal brand first and then...
Or his personal brand, I think as you try and evolve the relationships with clients, I can't help it. It becomes personal to me very quickly. I'm all about family. I'm about friends. I'm about rugby, unfortunately. I'd say golf, but I'm not very good at it, but I enjoy it. So when I talk to people, that's me. That's my personality. That's who I am. They're my key drivers. So therefore, all of my clients know that's who I am. And so therefore, that's the important bit for me, is I've always felt that I put myself there, and therefore the brand and everything else is important, absolutely. But I always think when my clients think insurance, they think Pete.
Yeah. So we're starting to get towards the end now, but there's a couple of questions around personal growth. What's a leadership skill that you've developed over the years, if you look back, that you'd say has been important?
I think for me, and again, the size of business that I was lucky enough, that I'm lucky enough to be involved with, it's just absolute openness and honesty about what you're trying to achieve, who you are, and how you're trying to do it.
Yeah.
As a smaller business, if you have your own agenda and you don't share that with your team, how are your team going to know to get on board?
Yeah.
So for me, just that, and it also, and I think with clients as well, it's also been something that by having that openness and that honesty at all times,
Yeah.
all problems can be solved easier because it's an easy dialogue.
Yeah.
The communication side of stuff of just very rarely do anything by emails. Emails are backing up a conversation for me.
Yes.
Because you read an email, if we've got bad news for a client that a claim's not being met or that there's an issue, an email is read in the mood you receive it in, not the mood it's been sent in. Whereas if you've got to talk, for me, you've got to talk to people. You've got to pick up the phone, have a chat. We've got a problem. But because you've had an open, honest, trusted relationship so far, those conversations are so much easier because you've got to this point together. Yes, there's a problem. They perhaps haven't done something they should have done. There's a problem with a claim, but luckily we haven't had many of those. But that openness, and with the team's exactly the same. If the business is struggling or wants to change direction, you can talk to the team and they know that it's coming from a position of that's been thought through and it's not on a whim. And everyone's hopefully on board because you've been open all the way with everyone. So they know that's your default position.
Yeah. That's so interesting that you talk about the importance of that. I did an interview yesterday and there was a phrase that Monica Collins, who has been a CEO and advises and such like now, she talked about, she said, my favourite quote is, communicate until you vomit. You can't communicate too much. And I loved it. It was like, and also I think what you're saying there should resonate with people because unfortunately I think with technology there's a lot of hiding behind messaging, emails, and I think a way to differentiate is by having conversation.
Yeah, I agree. It's an art. It's not even an art, is it? Again, if you're being open and you're just talking as who you are with the news that you've got to purvey to someone, good, bad, or indifferent, and therefore it shouldn't be complicated. You've got the protection, if you like. It's not face-to-face. Teams is an evolution which has taken a little while to get used to. Actually sitting face-to-face and people seeing how you're talking, but you can hide behind a phone if you want to. So they're not seeing your microaggressions and whatever else is you're accidentally showing on a Teams call.
You're banging your head
But
against the wall.
that's evolved. But originally, everything I did from when I first started going out on the road when I was 18, you were sitting face-to-face with people in all sorts of circumstances. I've had meetings 3 tiers up a scaffold. I've had meetings where I'm wearing a face nappy and a hood walking around a food manufacturing, try having a conversation about risk when they can't see your face moving. But if you've been open, then the conversations, the dialogue should be simple because you're not trying to convey something that's not a truth.
And it's trust. Combine that with everything that you've said about do what you say you're going to do, etc. You're building that transparency and trust. So you touched on the relationship that you had with your dad and the importance of that and having that. And your mum. Has there been anyone else in terms of advisors, mentors or frameworks or books that you've read that you'd like to share with anyone that have given you help and support over time?
I was very fortunate. Dad was retired. So therefore, when I set up the business, Dad was around and he was a knowledgeable individual. So it's a great soundboard for me. When we lost Dad, Mum stepped in. Maybe not the same kind of soundboard, but she had the same skill set of saying very little and just nodding at you. Or she was asleep. I'm not sure. One of those two. I'm not a big reader of books, if I'm honest with you. I did read many years ago, rugby-based Clive Woodward. And I can't remember. I was trying to look for the title last night, whether it might be called Winning. I'm not sure. But what I liked about it,
Yeah.
whether you like Woodward or not, was the World Cup winning team of 2003. He, in his book, seems to suggest that his role was just to put everyone in a position where they could do their best.
Yes.
And that's probably the one thing that I took through when I was working for a bigger firm, and then when I set up and started running Westfield, was about how do I make everything so that these guys can just do the jobs that they're supposed to be doing without being bogged down with all the other noise.
Yeah.
If you're a great salesman, how do we make sure that your focus is just on selling? And then we'll help you, or we'll pick up the stuff behind, so you can just focus on that role that you've got. And that's probably the one thing that I've tried to carry through from that, was just how do I put other people in a position where they can achieve the best they can do? Don't get me wrong, it's advantageous for me as well, but it gives that ability for people to focus on what they need to do for their role within the business, whether it's working the accounts team or being out doing client management or getting new business in. That's something for me that I've carried all the way through since reading that book, probably in, 2007, 2008, I guess. It had to be rugby based.
Yeah, of course. So looking back, is there anything you think you would do differently were you to do it all again?
Yeah, only one thing at the moment. We got a insurance broking bespoke back office system 2 years ago, and it is designed to do all the things you need to do. And I put it in, and within 6 months, I went, I should have done this 15 years ago. This is wicked.
Yeah.
I was working off, let's say, spreadsheets and Word documents, and our system was very simple because I needed it to be.
Yes.
But now I look back on what this back office system does for you, there was an awful lot of additional workload we've done over the years that this system just does for you.
Yeah.
I was adamant, I don't need to pay that amount of money for that amount of thing. It's a waste. But then as soon as I've sat with it, within 6 months, I was like, oh, yeah, that would have made life easier. But they are. That's all. Everything else has been an evolution.
And they should have had a better salesperson trying to sell it to you, shouldn't they?
When I first started, I was so focused on those first 2 years of, can this business wipe its face? Overheads were the most important thing. For me to spend £20,000 on a system, I needed to be earning £50,000 in the front to make it work. And the first couple of years, I just didn't have that, and I wasn't invested because I was not sure where the business was going to go. I just didn't see that as a valuable investment. Only at the end, when we were running £7 million worth of premium, whatnot, did I go, oh, that's why.
And one final question I've got for you. Is there any myth that you would like to bust about, call it scaling, call it growing a business?
I don't know if it's a myth, but for me, I've just tried at all times to just keep everything simple.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to have complicated procedures and actions and everything to grow and evolve. I think the simpler you make things, the fewer moving parts that you've got, actually, I think the more chance of success you've got, because you're looking at fewer things. But being in a bigger world now, and I see all the moving parts in all the different places, blimey, I've got to keep my eyes on it all. But we managed to grow ourselves to a good level by keeping things simple, concentrating on the basics, doing the simple things well, managing the expectations and exceeding them without overcomplicating life.
Superb. And that was my final question.
Lovely.
So I just want to say a big thank you. What a journey it's been for you. And there's loads for people to learn in there. It's clear that customer service is right at heart, along with family and being a big enabler for other people to achieve their potential, I would also say. So I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yes, I have. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Scaling Stories Unfiltered. And if you got value from today's conversation, hit the subscribe button and leave a comment. It really helps us more than you've got a scale up challenge or a story to share, or even someone that you'd recommend that I should interview. Take a look at the link to the website, or indeed just drop me a message. Until the next time, keep scaling, keep learning, and remember, you're not alone on your scale up journey.